Hello and welcome all you rail fans. This is Trains and Dioramas and I'm your host Kaustav Chatterjee. For a change, today I take you to Roaring Camp in Felton, California, one of the most prominent narrow-gauge historic locomotive and train sanctuaries in the United States. What I'm about to show you will surely brighten your day. This 1941 Plymouth switcher agrees. The small town of Felton is about 7 miles north of the beautiful beaches of Santa Cruz. As you enter the Roaring Camp Park, you'll be greeted by the early sight of trains and locomotives near the engine house and the yard. Once you cross the covered bridge and walk towards the depot, you get to see two cabooses, one of them resting on one of the reversing tracks of the Y. You walk through the rather cleaner and modern version of late 19th century logging camp to get the first glimpse of the depot where you collect the tickets. A general store, a dining hall, and a blacksmith shop, all essential parts of any small logging town, can be found around the depot. Walking past the depot, you get to see a remnant of a sawmill, faithfully recreated by collecting discarded components of a real one back in the day. The steam donkey to winch logs out of the log pond, the carriage, the head saw with a small steam engine, the log rollers, the whole deal, complete with a narrow-gauge log car at the end of the so-called log dump fork. Now to the main attraction, the exotic narrow-gauge geared locomotives. We'll start with Dixiana, the number one of the camp, the first rescue, the first inspiration, and the locomotive that started it all. When Mr. F. Norman Clark, the founder of Roaring Camp, found this engine abandoned near a coal mine in the Appalachian Mountain, it was nothing more than a rusty pile of junk, as described by the man himself. And look at her today. Built 107 years ago by Lima, this two-truck narrow-gauge Shay locomotive is the crown jewel of the park. Not to mention, the beauty of that unique one-sided gear mechanism never fails to draw the attention of the observers. Here you see her mustering the passenger carriages for the very first train to Bear Mountain, the summit and destination of the journey 3¼ of a mile away. The first step is filling her tender with plenty of water while us, the self-loading freight, board the train. As Dixiana gets her fill of water and last-minute safety checks, let's look at some other notable attractions. Here is number 2, Tuolumne. An 1899 two-truck Heisler locomotive built by Stearns. She used to be number 3 at the West Side Lumber Company, the last of the narrow-gauge California logging railroads in Tuolumne, California, hence the name. It's time to see the spectacles of her blowdown as she meets with Dixiana at the end of her first trip at Maxskunk Junction. Did you know that blowdown is a cleaning mechanism to clear the mineral deposits in the boiler so that the heating remains efficient? In contrast to the romanticism of a narrow-gauge railroad and century-old exotic geared locomotives, the standard gauge line running between Felton and Santa Cruz might not get as much attention, but the Big Trees and Pacific Railways is unique too. Here you see a former ATSF CF7 leading the way for the first train to Santa Cruz boardwalk. Fun fact here, CF7 is the same as EMD F7 with its streamlined body removed and replaced with a switcher body. It would take quite an imagination for the uninitiated to figure that out just by looking at the two versions. Back to the forest train, as Dixiana's thirst is quenched, we are officially ready to rumble.
15.
The train first traverses through the large carve of the mainline portion of the Y. As we soon enter the forest, I couldn't help but wonder that this whole show is a 1:1 scale proto-freelance model railroad. You see, there was never any logging done in this part of the Redwood forest. Mr. Clark had built this railroad back in 1963 to create a sanctuary of rescued locomotives, and by that time, logging railroads have already become a story of the past. Not just building a line to run these locos, the park takes the pain to maintain the authenticity of the time and the industry, as we have already seen in the photos of the recreation of a typical logging town at Roaring Camp. That's not it. The line itself has many authentic narrow-gauge logging railroad features, like the Indian Creek trestle that we are crossing now. Back in 1970s, though, this was not the most impressive trestle on the road. Let me get back to that when we reach the appropriate spot.
Our train is crossing over Indian Creek Trestle right now. Indian Creek Trestle is an all-wheel trestle bridge that stands about 42 feet above the forest floor of the entire town. Indian Creek Trestle holds the distinction of the sharpest curving passenger carriage. At the end of the high bridge, the train will cross back over the top of itself, so the high bridge will cross over the top of the low bridge, and the train will make a complete 360-degree corkscrew back on top of itself, nearly 100 feet in the air. Really an impressive feat of engineering, especially for a small current railroad at the time. This unfortunately came to a very tragic end on June 27th, 1970.
The fork on the left was the main line back in late 60s and early 70s. The track that we are on right now didn't exist back then. To attain an elevation of about 100 feet from this point on, there was a corkscrew curve with two elaborate trestles. The low bridge, the entrance of which we just passed, that led the trains to the high bridge to a corkscrew curve behind it. The mechanism not only achieved nearly 100 feet elevation, but also a full 360-degree rotation of the train. In 1976, all that burned down in a devastating fire. From that point on, the trains climbed that 100 feet vertical distance through the zigzag switchback operation that Dixiana is performing now. The overall switchback trackage achieves an average 9.5% grade, highest in the America for any passenger hauling railroad today. Only geared steam locomotives can handle that kind of grades with such ease, as demonstrated by Dixiana here.
Switchback here at Roaring Camp is a testament to how well trained and skilled that engine crew is for coaxing Dixiana up that very steep grade. Now, I have to jump off and do a line behind just like our firemen did. So
you can see all three levels. That's the lowest one.
Above and beyond and ran Roaring Camp for nearly 30 more years.
The Bear Mountain is nothing but a single-track reverse loop or a balloon with its throat at the west side junction. You get a 10-minute break to look around, and then it's time to start the journey back to Roaring Camp. We were lucky to witness a meeting of the two morning trains. Dixiana here patiently awaits Tuolumne to enter the loop and clear the switch before she can start her descent.
Causing all of the air to rush out of the system that would slam every single brake on the train on and bring us all to a grinding halt. This is a fail-safe system. It works every time. We owe a huge debt of gratitude to George Westinghouse for inventing it, because this system has saved the lives of thousands upon thousands of railroaders and passengers over the last nearly 150 years. You're going to hear our engineer release air out of that system, and you're going to feel the train kind of slow down a bit. It actually stretches the slack out of the couplers, making the train handling a whole lot smoother than if you were to just use a brake on the locomotive. So hear him release the air here in a second. I'm making a reduction right now. You can feel the train, there it is, right there. The train starts to slow down once he does that.
I must mention here that I really enjoyed the commentary of our conductor, Trevor. Much of the knowledge that I'm passing on here is basically received from him. So let's hear him explain an interesting fact and history of the railroad.
So just up ahead of our locomotive here, you're Redwood tree leaning over the track on the right-hand side. That location is very aptly named Leaning Tree. Very creative naming, huh? But that tree was actually leaning over back when this railroad, was built back in the 1960s. Leaning over just as much as it was back then, because they packed so much dirt in that little gully there. The tree leans over no more today than it did the day the railroad was built. But I want you to notice there's a bunch of little scrape marks in the side of that tree. Now that is from our engines hitting it as it goes by. You may have noticed number one actually probably scraped just a tiny bit. You can see a little line there where that sunshade keeps scraping on number one. And this is because the tree is still alive. It doesn't lean over anymore, but it's still alive, and it grows and gets wider as a result. So what we have to do about every 10 to 15 years is we bring a track crew up here, and that track crew will actually pick the track up and move it over away from the tree. It's about due for that right now. I think that's next winter's project there. But we are in a protected redwood forest here. As a result, we will not cut down any of the trees unless they pose a very danger to the passengers. In this case, that tree is not going anywhere anytime soon. So as the years go by, that tree will get wider and wider, and the track will move further and further away from that tree into the hillside, because in this forest, the tree has the right-of-way, not the train. And that's because this forest you're riding through today was the first redwood forest preserve ever created. And it was created by the Welch family, who actually still owns this property to this day. Joseph Welch was a San Francisco businessman who came here in 1867 with the intention of cutting all these trees down. Back then, if you owned a forested piece of property, that was generally what you did with it, was you cut down the trees, sold them off for lumber, and made a whole bunch of money off of it. Before he did this, though, he brought his wife Anna Welch up to come see the trees. And upon seeing these beautiful redwoods, realizing all the other old growth trees were being cut down, Mrs. Welch turned to her husband and said, "We need to preserve these trees for future generations to see."
The final act of the trip was the blowdown. Yes, that guy on the mountain bike would never make the mistake of coming in front of a raging steam locomotive again.
As we pull back into roaring camp, I'd like everyone to remain seated until we come to a full and complete stop and we hear one whistle from the engine. That's the sign the brakes are locked up and it's safe to disembark. We'll be getting off on the right-hand side of the train here. Off to your left, though, you'll see a trail that crosses over the tracks over there. That trail leads off to Henry Cowell Redwood State Park, where the oldest and largest trees in this entire forest are located. You're also welcome to check out Georgie's Cookhouse and the barbecue. Boy, there's lots of good things to eat over there. And the general store is open if you'd like a souvenir to remember your train ride today. Check out our heritage events around here, such as gold panning, the blacksmith, the marshal's office, things of that sort, lots to do.
The 75 minutes time travel ends back at the Roaring Camp depot, where the next lot eagerly awaits. The day was not over for us, though it's almost time to end this video. Before I go, a special thanks to my colleague and friend Mike Kiley for not only recommending the place, but also to drive us to Roaring Camp and spend the entire day with us. In case you're curious, yes, we did take the beach train. But I took a break from taking videos and decided to spend some quality time with my friend and family for the rest of the day. Have you ever been to Roaring Camp or planning to visit soon? What other railroad sanctuaries or scenic railroads have you visited? Let me know in the comments below. I know that you don't want this show to end, so here are some additional photos and footage as a special gift. Continue watching and enjoy. Until next time, happy railroading!